Hello everybody. Today we're going to have a little bit of a one-off video because we're not talking necessarily about mixing as much as this is just a Reaper tutorial. Well, not necessarily Reaper exclusive. This is just talking about drum machines and how to use them and how to understand them. But obviously Kenny Joya of Reaper Mania has an insane video on this. I highly recommend it. I'll link it as always. Yeah, so we're going to talk about two main types of programmable drums. We're going to use an actual drum plugin, which is a Studio Drummer by Native Instruments. Very good stuff. And then we're going to be talking about using the ReaSamploMatic plugin. We'll start off with that because that's one that everyone has. I believe I am using a copy from my brother for the native drummer, the Studio Drummer. But for ReaSamploMatic, it comes in with Reaper. So over here in front of us, we have different samples from the drums. I actually sampled it from the drum plugin. And so I'll just play through them. So that's kick, snare, hi-hat, crash, rack tom, and then a floor tom. Really straightforward. Nothing much to it. And so let's talk about how to get these into ReaSamploMatic. So we're going to open it up in demo here. As you can see, I already have the plugin loaded up and came prepared. And we're going to load up the kick and snare. So if I wanted to load up the kick in here, let's say I had it in a folder, off on my desktop, I could just drag the file in here. But if you're working with something that's actually recorded in Reaper, all you have to do is just click on import item from arrange. It will freeze for a second and then it will boot up. And so now you can see this is actually the waveform of our kick, and we can control things like attack, decay, release. So now that we have this all set up, we're going to sort of adjust this to our liking. If you hold down Alt and then press B, you will open up the virtual MIDI keyboard. This is where we can obviously control our demo, and we have to arm it and make sure that we're input as the virtual MIDI keyboard. Now you can see if I click any of these, it's going to come through. So the first thing we're going to do is we could adjust attack or decay, decay up or down or left or right. As of right now, honestly, I wouldn't really adjust it. It's pretty straightforward. And when it comes to drums, you're not going to really want to worry about a lot of these things here. However, if you were to work with, say, a piano, you would want to worry about things like pitch at start and at end and velocity and, all of that. With that in mind, let's get the setup so that whenever I press the C3 key, it will play the kick. And the secret here is we want this to only play on the C3 key because we want to route other things to the other keys. Otherwise, we would need different tracks for each drum, and that's really inconvenient. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over here where it says Note Start, and we're going to get it to go up to C3. And we're just going to keep dragging, and we're one octave below, and here we are, 48. And then, since we don't want it, so now it won't play if we play any of these notes here. But it will still play if we play any of the notes above, which, I didn't know you could drag it this far. But of course, we don't want that. We want it to only play on C3. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it up, not one above it, because that would be this key. We want to, we want to set it to 48. If we did it one above, then it would play on both of these, the black key as well. We want it just on C3. And there we have it. So I'm going to rename this FX instance to kick. And that's all set. Now, let's say I wanted to add in the snare, which we do. What I would do is I would go here and I would click on copy selected FX, and then I would press Control V and it would paste. And we're going to rename this to snare. And then in order to change the sample, we want to just click on import item from arrange. We want to have this highlighted, of course, and then it will put in the snare. I'm going to take out our keyboard, and you'll notice if we click on C3, it plays both the kick and the snare, and we don't want that. We want just the kick on C3, and then the snare on D3. So in order to do that, we'll just go here and we'll increase this by 2 so that it is on D3. And now, perfect. And that's pretty much all there is to it when it comes to programming these. Of course, I would go through and route each sort of sample here, but I once again came prepared. I already have that all set up right here in the ReaSamploMatic. So you can see we have kick, snare, hi-hat, crash, rack tom, and floor tom. If I open up our virtual keyboard, you can see if I play accordingly, we have these 3 keys, and I can also trigger them on my keyboard, which is pretty nice. Now let's say I actually wanted to record with these. I'm going to clear these, and let's go with a simple, let's see if I can play right. Oh, I forgot I don't have the keyboard up. All right, so let's see if I can just do this speed. Pretty straightforward stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the tempo. So, all right, so hopefully we have that set up now. And we can turn on our metronome up here. I like to turn up the volume quite a bit. I forgot to turn on the damn keyboard again. Let me start over. Perfect. And you'll notice I also recorded my mic there. And you'll also notice that I wasn't very good. I'm going to tie that down to performance anxiety. I don't know. Yeah, so let's edit this out. So you can see we have a MIDI track now, and this is just printing straight to the Samplomatic. If I actually right-clicked this and do apply track / take FX to item take, you'll hear my mic cut out for a second there as it processes. Geez, this is going off the rails, huh? And then if we press Control T, we can delete the active take, which I just realized we don't want to do. I'm tired. You're going to have to forgive me. So we're going to actually want to go to take and then explode all takes in place. That's weird. I've never seen it do that before. And I'm just going to drag this onto a new track. Realize that I don't have to. And then we can actually hear it being played. I'm going to lower this just to make sure it's not too loud. So you notice it's not very consistent. If you even look closely, we can see the transients are not on time. And that's user error. I mean, to be fair, I do have a microphone blocking me from my keyboard, and I couldn't hear the click, and excuses, you get the idea. The point is, I'm going to want to quantize this in such a way, and you can actually see here, this is funny, you can actually see the text, and we could rename that and it would remind us which is which, but you can just kind of get an idea by looking at it. Now, MIDI editing is pretty straightforward. Now, this is live recording drums. If I were to, I could double click and add in my own. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do quantize. You can press Q, and it will generally approximate what you were trying to play. And if we listen back, you can hear it's not perfect because I certainly was not. This is offset, right? Perfect. And of course, on top of this, say we wanted to add in things such as, you know, every time I hit this snare here, we get a bit of a crash. So and then I can also drag this up. You know, get those toms in there as well. Yeah, and that's really it for Samplomatic. Oh, you can hear I got a little off time. I mean, you know what? Screw it, man. I'm going to say for the most part, you know, at the end there, it's got pretty solid. What? This is almost... That was perfect. I nailed that one after, you know, quantizing it. Another really interesting feature of Reaper... Rhymed. I'm sorry, guys. I'm very tired. I'm very exhausted. But you know what? I'm loving it. So another really fun feature of Reaper is the humanize function. I'm not quite sure how many people know about this, but if you press H, you can actually see you can do something called humanizing the notes. You can adjust the sort of bias when it comes to velocity and timing. So you can have it set to sort of robot mode, which is what it's at right now. Or you could set it to, you know, standard human drummer to like mediocre drummer to sort of like what I was doing earlier. And then velocity, we'll just adjust velocity, duh. But keep in mind, we are working with samples that don't have variable velocity, so this won't really change anything. So let's listen to it now that I have the timing offset 100%. Oh, jeez. Yep. So this is what happens. We got a swing beat in there. This is, yeah, no, this is great if you want to absolutely ruin a recording. Obviously, you can press Control V and undo everything. But it is a good idea to humanize your MIDI tracks, for drums at least, to make them sound a little bit more human. I usually go with less than 10%, as 10% already is a little bit much. 10% is great if you're trying to simulate a drummer who's not quite sure if they know what they're doing. Generally speaking, 3% is a bare minimum, I would argue. It's hardly noticeable, but it does. What you're kind of shooting for too is this: the notes not being played at exactly the same time. Oh, well, something happened there. But yeah, it's a really straightforward process. Now, let's talk a little bit about doing this with a actual drum plugin. We're going to, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing Studio Drummer. And if we were to just take the MIDI notes and drag them over here, obviously I have the drums all set up. We don't really need to worry about the plugin here because, you know, unless if you're using Studio Drummer, which if you are, I might make a tutorial on it later on. Just let me know in the comments. We don't need to worry about this. You can hear it is not the exact same notes being played. And we can tell because if we open it up, you can hear the kick is actually all the way down here. We're actually playing this hi-hat, or not this hi-hat, the cymbal for the kick. We are then playing this, I think that's a ride. Can't really hear it that well. Another interesting cymbal for the hi-hat. And then the wrong type of cymbal for the crash. And then not even toms. These are all cymbals. So what we are going to do is we're going to press Control A and we're going to drag everything down. Technically one octave, but that's once again plugin specific. It might be different. You can hear now the hi-hat has been changed to a snare. So if we wanted to highlight everything in this MIDI row, we can just press right-click on this key here, and it will select everything in this row. And this is a hi-hat, so we're going to drag it until we have the hi-hat. And we can also, because once again, this plugin has a lot of sounds, we can select any hi-hat we want. So I'm going to go with this one. So that's almost pretty close. Now these are supposed to be cymbal crashes, so we're going to take them, and up here are the cymbals, so perfect. That's actually perfect. And then at the end here, yeah, checks out. That's it. Before we end the video, quick word on velocity. I didn't mention this earlier because it's not something I need to worry about if you're just working with straight up samples. But velocity, when you are working with the drum plugin, you can access that by going to the top of the little note and then holding down the left mouse button. You can drag up and down. And what that will do is we'll change how hard the drum or cymbal or whatever is being hit. So very low, you can barely even hear it. But very hard, you can really hear it punch through. You can hear if I humanize this and change the velocity to 100%, just listen to how inconsistent it is. Yeah, I mean, there's that, and other than that, there's nothing much else to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. This video was actually a viewer request. I'll put the person's name up on screen. I believe it was a Reddit comment. Thank you so much for the request. Shooting this has been one hell of a time. I am quite exhausted, but thank you guys so much. I will catch you guys in the next video. See you guys around.